All right, Ms. Williams, we're ready to start.
Yes. Today, we are all abiding by the CDC and the governor's guidelines for gatherings, given the public health emergency. Under the circumstances, the governor has updated an executive order to allow for public agencies to conduct meetings by telephone conference or video conference. Please note the following meeting norms before we formally get started. This meeting is being recorded for public meeting purposes. If you wish to make official public comment online regarding an item on the Orleans Parish School Board meeting agenda, please submit an e-public comment card. For smartphone users, you may scan the QR code displayed on the screen now prior to the start of the meeting or within 30 minutes after the meeting begins. The meeting moderator will announce the speaker at the appropriate time. The speaker is to self-identify with the raise your hand feature at the bottom of the web page, and the meeting moderator will unmute the speaker's audio. To comment by phone, please submit an e-public comment card at go.boards.la/ops/pub prior to the meeting or within minutes after the meeting begins. The meeting moderator will announce the speaker at the appropriate time. The speaker is to self-identify with the raise your hand feature by dialing *6, and the meeting moderator will unmute the speaker's audio. The speaker should state his or her name and address for the record. Public comments are limited to 2 minutes pursuant to board policy. Emails sent to boardmeetingfeedback@nolapublicschools.com or any messages by the chat and or Q&A functions will be noted in the record but will not be read as live public comment during the meeting. If you need further instruction on how to make official public comment at today's meeting, those may be found at go.boarddocs.com/la/nops/board.nsf/public, located on the same page where the agenda is typically posted. Board members' lines are muted upon joining the broadcast. At roll call or to make comment, make a motion, second a motion, or cast a roll call vote, please unmute yourself. The audio button is located at the bottom left corner. Every action item will be a roll call vote to ensure that votes are recorded properly. Please remember to mute your lines when you're not speaking for a clearer broadcast. The general format of the meeting will be as follows. Action items, recommended actions will be read. I will ask for a motion in a second, followed by public comment, then board comment, and the roll call vote. With that, I will yield to the board president.
Thank you, Board Council Williams. I'm now going to call to order the Orleans Parish School Board Business Meeting for July 30th, 2020. The time now is 5:40 p.m. May I have a roll call vote?
Mr. Ashley.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Present.
Ms. Ellison.
Here.
Ms. Jackson.
Here.
Mr. Koppel.
Present.
Mr. Marshall.
Here.
Ms. Newell Houston.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Interpretation services are available during today's meeting. I'll yield now to our interpreters.
Si hay alguien que va a querer interpretación al español de esta reunión, por favor marquen 978-990-5000. Repito, para escuchar la reunión en español pueden marcar 978-990-5000, código de acceso 707717, numeral. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Vic Quinn Pham, I'm a Vietnamese interpreter. Xin chào toàn thể quý vị, tôi tên là Việt, tôi là thông dịch viên. Tôi trợ giúp thông dịch cho buổi họp này. Nếu quý vị cần trợ giúp, xin gọi điện thoại ở số 504-975-4967. Xin chân thành cảm ơn quý vị. And this time I would like to yield back to the board president, Mr. Ashley.
Thank you so much. Let's move to 1.2, Pledge of Allegiance. There's a recording of the pledge that'll be led by students from Morris Jeff and Alice Hart Charter School. If you can, board members, let's follow the recording of these beautiful young people.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
of the United States of America,
for liberty and justice for all.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation. All right, let's move to 1.3, adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions, deletions, or modifications? I believe that we do.
There is a request to add a resolution to the meeting.
We need a motion.
I so move.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. At this time, we need to, actually, let me just specify what the resolution is for records
Please.
purposes and to give the public the information that they need. It is a resolution urging all schools under the Orleans Parish School Board's jurisdiction to enact policies and plans to thoughtfully evaluate every teacher, school employee, and student request for distance learning and teaching opportunities, allow such opportunities as required by the state of the public health, and to support and properly train to teach or learn from home until it is safe to return to school. So we have a motion by Mr. Marshall and a second by Mr. Koppel to add that resolution to the agenda. We have to have an opportunity for public comment. So if there is anyone who wants to comment on this motion to add this resolution to the agenda, please engage the raise your hand feature at this time.
All right, I have one speaker, Taylor Ott. Mr. Ott, if you could please state your address for the record, name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Taylor Ott, and I live at 926 9th Street, New Orleans 70115. I would like to add this to the agenda. I also have a document that I would like to present to you guys, which I am happy to read to. We as arts educators stand in solidarity with Morris Jeff United Educators, United Educators of Franklin, Chicago Teachers Union, and the United Teachers of Los Angeles, and their statement that the in-person reopening of schools must be delayed. We agree with the United Teachers of Franklin's statement. Although we all wish for a return to the classroom, it is our obligation as educators to protect our students, and we must proceed with safety as our highest priority. The United States is leading in COVID-19 cases in the world. We have not put in efforts to slow, let alone eliminate the spread of this disease we still know little about. What has been proven is that it disproportionately affects Black, brown, and poor people. New Orleans is a 60% Black city and has a poverty rate of 24%. This puts our community in a particularly vulnerable position and therefore must be taken into account as to how to reopen our schools and economy safely. This is a longer letter, but I think I don't want to run out of time. And what I really want to stress is that I have nearly 150 signatures from educators and concerned citizens, students, and other artists that are concerned about our ability to come back. The letter also says that the kind of, we would like there to be a basically zero. I know there's other demands of 5% infection rate in our community to make it safe to come back. But until then, it is simply not. And that there are no plans that will be enough to protect teachers, staff, students, and their families without a statewide effort to first, reduce infection rates. Our top priorities as educators is our students' safety, and we cannot in good conscience accommodate negligence and a disregard to their well-being. We ask that you stand in solidarity with our educators, our students, and all of our community's safety.
I have one more hand. The speaker is Whitney.
Hi, Whitney Henderson, Barone Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70113. Thank you guys so much again. I'm going to just restate some of the points that were made in Tuesday's conversation for the board. You know that by this point that I was the author of a petition that was started to really protect teachers during this time. And right now, or at the time, we had about maybe 800 signatures. And right now we have about 1,200 and counting still. I think this goes to show that many teachers, paraprofessional, and staff are really concerned about their health during that time, or during this time of COVID-19. And one of the things that was mentioned last week was that we really urge OPSB to meet the demands of the petition, which one were that during virtual learning and professional development, in-person attendance be optional for teacher support staff and paraprofessionals. That demand number 2, schools cannot resume in-person instruction until COVID-19 cases in Orleans Parish decrease to 5% positive or 50 or less new cases for 7 consecutive days. And then finally, demand 3, that any plan for in-person attendance must include regular and prioritized COVID-19 testing for all staff, all school staff. One of the things that we've noticed in some of the many signatures and many comments that we have, I am going to read just a few just to make it incredibly clear that teachers everywhere want your support. One says, all teachers, regardless of whether they work in public or charter schools or private schools, deserve the right to speak up and have their concerns addressed without retribution, which we've seen retribution happen so much in the past week for teachers who boldly stood up to some of the policies within their schools. The second one says, we have to keep our community safe during this pandemic. We want it to be clear that schools are reopening and our economy, while we want it to be open in the midst of all of the ongoing pandemic, it's just not safe for us to return to school buildings. We love children, but until cases have dropped and school buildings are made safe, we really want there to be solidarity around this issue. The third and the final one, as I'm running out of time, I'm a teacher in New Orleans. I'm a mother of a 4-time cancer survivor who relies on me for care. I cannot, with conscience, go to school every day to be around a large staff of people who may or may not have been taking COVID precautions seriously. It's too great of a risk for me. I love my family and I love my children, but this is not worth my mom's well-being.
Do we have any others who engaged the raise your hand feature in connection with adding this item to the agenda?
Yes, we have several, some that already had comment cards.
If there were cards in already on the item of adoption of the agenda, I'm asking if there are any others who engaged the raise your hand feature solely in connection with Mr. Marshall's motion to add to the agenda.
I would assume, yes, they've left their hands up. Next speaker, Shannon Cipher.
No, that's not what I'm asking. If there were cards put in on action item 1.3, those are not the comments at this time.
Okay, I do apologize. Yes, there's 2 comment cards on the adoption of the agenda.
Well,
Lauren,
we're not at that moment yet. We have a motion by Mr. Marshall and a second by Mr. Koppel. We've had the 2 public comments, and is there any board discussion on the item of adding to the agenda? If not, there's a roll call vote. Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Koppel?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell-Houston?
Yes.
That item passes by unanimous vote, so the agenda now has been amended to add the resolution that has been proposed by Mr. Marshall. Now we're at 1.3, adoption of the agenda. Mr. Ashley.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as modified?
So moved.
Is modified. Adoption of.
I have a motion by Ms. Ellison. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Ms. Jackson. Do we have any public comments?
yes, the first speaker is Lauren Jouett. Ms. Jouett, can you please state your name and address for the record, please? Okay, the next speaker that's been a card is Colette Tippy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Good. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
I was raising my hand to speak on behalf of Lauren Jewett because she's having difficulties with staying connected to this meeting. So she sent me her statement. Lauren Jewett, 604 Sadie Avenue, Metairie, Louisiana, 70003. As a special education teacher, I love what I do. I care about my colleagues. I care about my students. I care about my students' families. I care about my community. And within those considerations of care, safety, and wellness, physical safety and wellness and emotional safety and wellness are paramount. I have serious concerns right now that some charter networks and individual charter sites in the city have been mandating already for staff members to be in school buildings. At this moment in time, when we have a lack of testing, a high rate of rising cases, and students not being required to be learning in person in buildings until at least after Labor Day, then we also protect our teachers and school staff members and treat them with dignity and humanity. Every teacher, school employee, and student should have the option to teach or learn from home, as well as complete professional development trainings, which can be done safely and adequately from home. There are teachers and school staff members who are fortunate to work at school sites who are allowing this flexibility. However, this is not true for every teacher and school staff member in the city. And there are some teachers who feel that their concerns are being silenced. Some are even being met with retaliation. Many educators in our city also live with other educators or other people who are in various school sites across the city. We are not safe until we are all safe. For the safety of school staff members and teachers, I urge that you be proactive in safety of our education community and include the adoption of Board Member Nolan Marshall's safety resolution on the agenda for this evening. Thank you.
That was the last card on item 1.3.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any board comment? If not, we're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Koppel?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Okay, motion passes. The agenda is adopted as amended. We're at 2.1. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts the minutes of the June 11th, 2020 Board Business Meeting, June 23rd, 2020 Special Board Meeting, and July 22nd, 2020 Board Member Training as provided. May I have a motion?
Move for adoption of the minutes and waive the reading.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Koppel and a second by Mr. Ashley. Do we have any public comments?
None.
Any discussion by the board? If not, roll call. Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Koppel?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston?
Yes.
Motion passes. Minutes are adopted. We're at item 3.
Good evening, everyone. Last week, based on the latest data and health trends, we made the tough but necessary decision to begin the school year with distance learning. As you know, this was not a decision that was made lightly, but it was made with the well-being of our students, our teachers, and our entire community in mind. I have to tell you, as an educator and as a parent, that this was a very, very tough decision. But I know at the end of the day, it is the right decision for our community. In the coming weeks, we will continue to work closely with health experts to monitor the latest COVID-19 trends as we work towards hopefully resuming in-person learning in the month of September. Now in just about 1 week, students will begin a new school year, which means just like any other school year, they will be meeting their new teachers, they'll be reconnecting with old friends and making new friendships as they tackle the next chapter in their school careers, but a bit differently than they have in the past. And while the start to the school year may feel different for our students and for our families, our schools and our teachers are working hard to train and prepare to welcome our students back for a great beginning to a brand new school year. This week, and actually today, as we lay John Lewis to rest, we must continue to celebrate his rich and inspired legacy as a civil rights icon. What better way to honor John Lewis and his life's work than to encourage our young people to be student leaders and involved citizens. This year, we are again working with the Lower Ninth Ward Voters Coalition and the League of Women Voters to get high school students registered to vote. Because of COVID-19, the group is considering ways to conduct a virtual voter registration drive and is working with our schools to identify ways to encourage students to register to vote. And today, I am also encouraging all of us to make a difference by completing this year's U.S. Census. It is important that we all be counted in the census because that directly influences critical school funding for our students in our schools, along with other important resources for our community. This funding is even more critical now in a time of COVID-19. So please take a few minutes to be counted and complete the census form. Go to census.gov if you're interested in looking for more information. Next, I'm proud to share that this year, the state of Louisiana recommended to BESA to solidify our role as a leader in early childhood education alongside Agenda for Children as co-lead agencies for our community network, New Orleans Early Education Network. We are excited to have Jen Roberts with us this evening, the president of Agenda for Children and executive director of the New Orleans Early Education Network, again with us this evening. To talk about our partnership and how we will continue to work to advance early childhood education here in our great city, the city of New Orleans. At this time, I would like to turn my report over to Ms. Roberts so we can hear from Jen at this time. Jen?
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the time. Appreciate the opportunity to discuss more. So as many of you know, Agenda for Children is a 35-year-old child advocacy nonprofit organization that serves young children and their families. As you know, many of us are currently discussing ways to increase access and quality surrounding early childhood education, as over 70% of low-income children, many of which are disproportionately Black and Brown, do not have access to a publicly funded seat. We, as our organization, work alongside parents, families, child care centers, caregivers, schools, and businesses. And we do this across actually 12 parishes in Southeast Louisiana, representing about 100,000 young children. What we do is we aim to increase access, so improve the quality of learning experiences for young children and their families, improve the quality of those learning experiences, and to help augment supports for early childhood professionals, and provide resources to those that work with or on children's behalf, specifically training, funding, data, research, coaching, etc. Next slide, please. In 2012, as many of you know, the Louisiana Department of Education passed Act 3, and the legislature passed it, and it was a sweeping set of reforms that really aimed to coordinate early childhood within 64 community networks, one of representing each parish. Since its inception, Agenda has served as the lead agency. However, we have worked with a steering committee comprised of 13 community partners, each representing funding sources and early childhood stakeholders, as well as New Orleans Public Schools, who has also served in very formal capacities in helping us meet those obligations. Each community network has a network that is led by either a school district or a public body, and it includes every single publicly funded program. So that includes both federally funded programs such as Head Start, locally funded programs, state funded programs, and even new programs like the New Orleans City Seats program that is funded locally by our mayor's office. Next slide, please. Historically, as noted, we have worked alongside New Orleans Public Schools in performing these functions and meeting these obligations. Essentially, they are to do three primary things. One is to conduct class observations of every publicly funded classroom. One is to ensure that coordinated enrollment across every single funding type occurs. And the last is that we request on behalf of our community publicly funded seats and that we administer those seats. We have shared these responsibilities, but in contrast to the years prior, we decided to jointly apply this year for the lead agency designation for Orleans Parish so that it would more accurately and transparently reflect the roles and responsibilities that we currently share. In this new time, which went into effect in July 1, Agenda for Children will continue to serve as the administrator for the community network. We will continue to convene the steering committee and to convene partners. We will also serve as the fiscal agent for any potential funds that come as part of being the lead agency. And we will also do the October and February child count. This also means that we will serve as the lead of the state's Ready Start network, which is kind of a new iteration of what the community networks will be. We will also continue to conduct class observations for over 1,400 infant, toddler, and pre-K classrooms and provide feedback to every single participating program. This year, this is probably no surprise, but New Orleans Public Schools through Enroll NOLA will continue to coordinate and administer the unified enrollment process and eligibility processes for all non-Head Start programs. And this year, they will also lead the coordination of our state funding application for the community network. And so in contrast to years past, what we have done here is we jointly applied to ensure that transparency and accountability could be clearly designated and denoted with our partners at the state and also for our community. And we are very excited to have additional capacity potentially, and particularly during a time of COVID where we need as many partners working on the ground on this issue as possible. So that concludes right now my comments. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Any questions from the board members for Ms. Roberts? Well, Jen, thank you so much for your presentation. Of course, thank you for your continued partnership, and we look forward to continue to co-lead early childhood education here in the city of New Orleans together with our two agencies. Thank you so much again for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
As I prepare to wrap up, again, just want to remind our community of our announcement of starting our school year as virtual learning. And as we prepare for the month of September, we want to be able to transition to in-person learning for our families who are opting into in-person learning. But it's going to take our entire community to be able to get there for the month of September. And so, again, I will continue to remind our community to continue to wear face coverings, wash your hands as often as you can, practice social distancing as often as you can, and if you are sick, please stay home. We have 45,000 students in our school system throughout Orleans Parish, and our students are counting on us. And it will take our entire community to make sure that we can get our kids back into the classroom. So again, I thank everyone for their commitment to our young people. But right now we have to work together so that we can get our students back in school for the month of September. And this concludes my report for this evening. Thank you so much.
President Ashley, may I?
Yeah, please. Mr.
Yes, yes, Superintendent Lewis. Let me just take a minute to thank and commend you, our board president, your staff, our school leaders, teachers, and your staff for your very difficult work in planning and preparing for this school year, and ultimately coming to a possibly, and I'm very sure difficult, but ultimately the right decision delay the physical attendance of our students and gratefully our teachers and staff in our schools. I hope we continue to make this assessment in the same manner going forward. So to all of you, I think I know it was difficult work in preparing, but I do want to thank you and all of your staff and all of our leaders for agreeing to work together to come to that decision. So I just want to say that, thank you to all. Did my message come
All right,
through?
thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Oh, it came through. It was strong. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I think right now we are, Superintendent, you're done with your presentation. If you are, we're going to move to 4.1 consent agenda, and I will yield to board counsel.
One thing I want to note, Mr. Ashley, I just was alerted by the meeting moderator that there were some additional cards that were put in connection with item 1.3, which was the adoption of the agenda. I presume that those cards are really in connection with the resolution that has been added to the agenda. So I'm asking the moderator to hold those comments to let those people speak on item 5.14, which is the actual resolution. If anyone wants to speak prior to that item, please put it in the chat function so that we can recognize you sooner. With that, though, we'll move along with the meeting. We're at item 4.1. We're at the consent agenda. The following items are on the consent agenda. 4.2, request to approve NOLA Public School recommendation for no allocation of funding for unpaid settlements and judgments in 2020 to 2021. 4.3, request to award proposal number 20-0071 for COVID-19 program and grants management services. 4.4, request to approve the McKinney-Vento grant to provide services to homeless children and youth in the amount of $322,271 per year for the 3 fiscal years ending in June 2021, 2022, and 2023. 4.5, acceptance and donations from New Schools for New Orleans Technology Access Fund to support distance learning initiatives in the amount of $203,785 and income life preservation initiative in Urban South in the amounts of $14,940 and $10,800 respectively. Item 4.6, request to ratify the purchase of 600 Dell Latitude laptops from Dell. 4.7, request to ratify the purchase of 3,675 Chromebooks from Trox through the Interlocal Purchasing System Cooperative. Item 4.8, request to approve request for qualifications number 20-FAC-0070 for professional engineering services. Item 4.9, request to award invitation to bid number 20-FAC-0040 for Hines Elementary envelope repairs, phase 3. 4.10, request to award proposal number 20-FAC-0067 for custodial and janitorial services. Item 4.11, request to award invitation to bid number 21-CN-003 paper products for the child nutrition program fiscal year 2020 to 2021. 4.12, amendment to cooperative endeavor agreement between the Recovery School District and the Orleans Parish School Board for Lafayette Elementary School. Item 4.13, request to approve Apple Bus Company for bus transportation services at Cog Hill Elementary School. Item 4.14, approval of 2020 board committee reappointments. And item 4.15, new policy IDAA COVID-19 distance learning. With that, it is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board move to approve consent agenda items 4.2 to 4.15 as presented in Globo. May I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Newell using
Second by Ellison.
by Ms. Ellison. Do we have any public comments?
Yes, I have a card from Richard Exenocious.
Yeah, this is Richard Exnicious. I live at 7916 Nelson Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. Again, my comment is not addressing this particular part of the agenda, so I would request that I be put back to another part of the meeting if the topic I wish to speak on does come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay. Is there any comments from the board? If not, we're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Miss Ellison,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Koppel,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Miss Newell Houston.
Yes.
Motion passes, consent is adopted. We're now at item 5, action items, Mr. Ashley. We're at action item 5.1, request to approve the First Amendment with Educators for Quality Alternatives to manage a high-quality restorative program. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approves the First Amendment in the amount of $750,000, extending the contract with Educators for Quality Alternatives to administer the Bridge program for 7th and 8th grade students who have been expelled or are at risk of expulsion for the 2020 to 21 school year, and authorize the General Counsel to prepare the contract amendment for signatures of the Board President and the contractor. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Brown. We have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Marshall. Are there any public comments?
Yes, Robert Patterson. Mr. Patterson, if you're in the meeting, can you please engage the raise hand feature? Thank you. Could you please state your name and address for the record, please?
I'm sorry, my name is Robert Patterson. My address is 3507 Magnolia Street. Did you hear me?
Yes, sir, you can begin with your comments.
My comment was to address in, wasn't on this topic, it was in 5.1 that I think you spoke about.
We're at 5.1, sir.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. My comment was to address the actual name change on Lusher Senior High School, and
that's not before the board at the moment.
Okay. That's what my comment was based on. I thought it was under 5.1.
Yeah, no, sir. Thank you, though.
Okay. Thank you.
That is the only comment card on that item.
Any questions or comments from the board? If not, we're at roll call. Mr. Ashley.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Miss Ellison.
Yes.
Miss Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Koppel.
Yes.
Mr. Marshall.
Yes.
Miss Newell Houston.
Yes.
Motion passes. We're at item 5.2, request to award proposal number 20-0056, professional development services for trauma-informed practices. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board accepts the proposal meeting the specifications, terms, and conditions for professional development services for trauma-informed practices from Acoban LLC in the amount of $225,000 for 2 years with a 1-year option to renew, subject to board approval, and authorizes General Counsel to prepare a contract for signatures of the board president and contractor. May I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Ellison. Is there a second?
And second.
We have a second by Mr. Brown. Is there any public comment?
Yes, the first speaker is Alex Frosch, followed by Dottie Reese.
Hello, my name is Alex Frosch. I'm at 1724 Frenchman Street, 70116. My comment is that it's so unsafe to be sending teachers into school right now, and so unfair. No one has asked to be, but we're on the front line of a racially charged experiment, and sending Black and Brown students and teachers.
Ma'am?
Yes, hello?
The item before the board is about professional development services, a procurement for trauma-informed services or practices. I think your comments go to item 5.14, which is not before the board at the moment.
I apologize.
The next speaker is Dottie Reese, followed by Lona Hankins.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, ma'am. Please state your
Thank
name and
you.
address for the record, please.
Yes, I will restate. Dottie Reese, partner with DMM and Associates, located at 4298 Elysian Fields Avenue, Suite B, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70122. The partnership with ACABEN and DMM and Associates is excited about the opportunity to serve the children and the staff of Orleans Parish Public Schools. We know that the evaluation team weighed a significant number of important factors in their decision, including holding presentations with organizations and scoring across 6 domains. As the highest scoring organization and partnership, we look forward to combining our nationally recognized clinical social work skills with the national expertise and thought leaders in ACABEN. And ACABEN is a minority-owned business focused on professional development and training, and DMM is owned by Dottie Reese and my business partner, Dr. Margaret Montgomery Richard, and we are a minority and women-owned DBE consulting organization. And we want to thank you in advance for the opportunity to do this critically important work for children and the parents within New Orleans, Louisiana. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments?
Yes, Ms. Hankins, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Lona Edwards Hankins. I want to rise to make sure that as you are, as this consultant firm is counseling the children, they are also evaluating the programs that the children are in to ensure that the programs are not re-triggering the children in the trauma that they may be coming to school with, based on the behaviors that the adults in the building are doing, or their disciplinary practices that they may have at their schools, or just their teaching habits and their curriculum and pedagogy that they may have at that school. That I am very concerned about. Additionally, I am concerned that we had to go outside of New Orleans to find, I understand that this is a partnership, and I'm glad to hear that there's some level of national firm and someone who's local. I did not realize that before, but the fact that we had a strong New Orleans-based institution that understood New Orleans women and children, and somehow or another we need to prioritize New Orleans businesses in our scoring systems, and there are ways to do that easily in our selection process so that our money stays local as much as possible. Thank you.
That was the final card on that item.
Any comments from the board? If not, we're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley.
I abstain.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Miss Ellison.
Yes.
Miss Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Koppel.
Yes.
Mr. Marshall.
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston.
I also abstain.
We have 5 in favor and 2 abstentions. The motion passes. We're now at action item 5.3. Request to approve transitioning to fully insured medical insurance for eligible active and retired employees effective September 1st, 2020. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approves transitioning from self-insured to fully insured medical insurance for its eligible active and retired employees and their dependents effective September 1st, 2020 through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana Insurance Company, and authorizes the board president to sign the related documents. May I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Koppel. Is there a second by Ms. Newell Houston? Is there any public comment?
There is none.
Any comments from the board? We're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms. Ellison.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Koppel.
Yes.
Mr. Marshall.
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston.
Yes.
That item passes. We're at item 5.4, request to adopt resolution 14-20. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts resolution 14-20, authorizing the use of $444,841 in system-wide reserves to fund operating Mary D. Coghill Elementary School for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Reading of the resolution, I presume.
Yes.
We have a motion by Mr. Koppel. Was there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Jackson. Any public comments?
None.
Any comments from the board? We have a roll call. Mr. Ashley.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms. Ellison.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Koppel.
Yes.
Mr. Marshall.
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston.
Yes.
That item passes. We're at item 5.5, request to adopt resolution 15-20. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts resolution number 15-20, adopting and finalizing the general fund budget of the Orleans Parish School Board for the fiscal year beginning on July 1st, 2020 and ending on June 30th, 2021. May I have a motion?
Move to adopt the resolution and waive the reading of the resolution.
We have a motion by Mr. Koppel. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Jackson. Is there any public comment?
None.
Any discussion or comments from the board? If not, we're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms. Ellison.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Koppel.
Yes.
Mr. Marshall.
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston.
Yes.
That item passes. We're at item 5.6, request to approve resolution 16-20. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts resolution 16-20, authorizing the issuance and sale of revenue anticipation notes series 2020A of the Orleans Parish School Board in a principal amount not to exceed $100 million, making application to the State Bond Commission for consent and authority for such borrowing and providing for other matters with respect to the foregoing. May I have a motion?
Move to approve resolution and waive the reading of the resolution.
We have a motion
Second.
by Mr. Koppel. Is there? We have a second by Ms. Newell Houston. Is there any public comment?
Yes, Ms. Lona Hankins. Ms. Hankins, your address for the record, please.
Yes, 3704 Magazine Street. Last year when this issue came up, it came up around the same time the budget, and it was not, the budget did not include the capital budget, and there was a request to make sure that cash flow for the capital projects that you guys were going to do in the calendar year was included in the budget, so that you can make sure that when you are requesting a loan, because FEMA is a reimbursement, that you are asking for the appropriate amount and that you are not asking for too much or too little. So I just want to put that back on the record so that when you are going to the bond commission, that you are asking for the appropriate amount that you need. Asking for a blanket 100 million or whatever that number is seems like a large amount, particularly since you are about to retire a whole bunch of debt. I'm really curious as to what you're going to spend this money on, particularly since you're not about to do any capital improvements on buildings.
Thank you, Ms. Hankins. That is the only card on that item.
Okay, do we have any comments or questions from the board? If not, we're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Koppel? Mr. Koppel?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston?
Yes.
That item passes. We're now at item 5.7, request to adopt resolution 17-20. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts resolution 17-20, approving the 2019 to 2020 Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire as part of the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's requirement for completion of a financial statement audit, and authorizes the board president to execute any and all relevant documents. May I have a motion?
Move to adopt resolution and waive the reading of the resolution.
We have a motion by Mr. Koppel. Is there a second?
Second by Ellison.
We have a second by Ms. Ellison. Any public comment?
None.
Any questions or comments from the board? We're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Koppel?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston?
Yes.
That item passes. We're at item 5.8, resolution 18-20 regarding census participation. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts resolution 18-20, supporting a complete count in the decennial U.S. 2020 census and encouraging schools under the jurisdiction of the Orleans Parish School Board to promote the 2020 census. May I have a motion?
Move for the resolution and waive the reading of the resolution.
We have a motion by Mr. Koppel. We have a second by Ms. Jackson. Any public comment? If not, any questions or comments from the board? We're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Koppel?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston?
Yes.
That item passes. We're at item 5.9, request to approve resolution 20-20. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts resolution 20-20, approving the use of $10 million in FEMA funds to renovate Julius Rosenwald Elementary School. May I have a motion?
So move with the waiving of the reading of the resolution.
We have a motion by Mr. Koppel. We have a second.
Second by
Ellison. Is there any public comment?
Yes. One card, Ms. Hankins.
Yes, Lona Hankins, 3704 Magazine Street. I just want to again reiterate the fact that there was no public meeting where Rosenwald would receive an investment as compared to Johnson, where there were several public meetings where Johnson was supposed to receive an investment, and also reiterate that you may be violating some NEPA regulations with FEMA, and then the proportion of damage to the city on the West Bank versus the East Bank, and the amount of money that the West Bank is receiving. And lastly, Rosenwald is a open wall building. It was built in the, 60s. It's one of those kind of architectural buildings without walls. I'm not sure how you invest renovated properly, to put walls in it and fix the mechanical systems. We looked at that in the past. And so I just, buyer beware. I think you are making a huge problem for yourself, particularly with the federal government. That's all I have.
Any other comments?
That was the only part on that item.
Any questions or comments from the board? If not, we're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Koppel?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston?
Yes.
That item passes. We're at item 5.10, request to approve resolution 21-20. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts resolution 21-20, approving the use of $700,000 in FEMA funds to purchase furniture, fixtures, and equipment for New Orleans Charter, Science, and Math High School. May I have a motion?
Move to approve resolution and waive the reading of the resolution.
Second by John.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Koppel, a second by Mr. Brown. Do I have any public comments?
Yes, Shannon Cipher. Ms. Cipher, if you're in the meeting, can you engage the raise your hand feature, please?
Hi, I would like to speak at the end when you talk about the new meeting docket item.
Okay, item 5.14.
Thank you.
That was the only card on that item.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? If not, we're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Koppel?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston?
Yes.
That item passes. We're at item 5.11, request to adopt resolution 22-20. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopts resolution 22-20, authorizing the superintendent to enter into the membership agreement with the Region 8 Education Service Center, the interlocal purchasing system, to make purchases under the authority of Act 548 of the 2016 regular legislative session, and in compliance with Louisiana Revised Statute 38:2212.1N procurement method, and authorizes the board president or superintendent to execute any and all relevant documents. May I have a motion?
So moved with the waiving of the reading of the resolution.
I have a motion by Mr. Koppel. Is there a second?
Second by Ellison.
We have a second by Ms. Ellison. Any public comments?
None.
Any questions or comments from the board? We're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Kopp?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston?
Yes.
That item passes. We're at item 5.12, resolution 23-20. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopt a resolution urging all charter schools under the Orleans Parish School Board's jurisdiction to adopt minimum standards for distance learning consistent with Orleans Parish School Board policy IDAA during the COVID-19 pandemic to ensure continuity of learning. May I have a motion?
So moved with the waiving of the reading of the resolution.
I have a motion by Mr. Koppel, a second by Mr. Ashley. Any public comments?
Yes, we have several cards on this item. The first speaker is Taylor Ott, followed by Erica Otero.
I'd like to yield my time to talk to 5.14 when we get to it.
Okay. Ms. Otero, if you're in the meeting, can you please engage the raise hand feature? If not, the next speaker just submitted a card under Sam. After Sam, Alicia Williams.
Hi, my name is Alicia Williams, but I would also like to yield my time to talk about this at 5.14, please.
Okay. Sam King, can you please state your full name and address for the record on item 5.12?
Thank you. I would also like to yield my time to issue 5.14 as well.
Okay. The next speaker is Whitney Henderson. After Ms. Henderson, Sarah Hill. Whitney, if you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'd like to reserve my time for item 5.14. Thank you.
Sure. Last two speakers, Sarah Hill and Regina Sullivan. Ms. Sullivan, if you could state your full name and address for the record, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Regina Sullivan. My address is 2101 Sear Street in New Orleans, 70122. I just wanted to make comment that, you know, I know that you put 5.14 up. I would love to see that posted somewhere. I also wanted to say that this talks about minimum standards for distance learning, and it doesn't talk about minimum standards for like the health and safety of teachers during distance learning. I am fortunate enough to work for a CMO that is allowing me to work from home, but I think it's very concerning that there are organizations in this city that are forcing teachers to go in person when we're saying that that isn't safe for our students. I also want to point out that I think a lot of it is based in this idea that, well, we can't be sure if you're working if you're not in the building, which is pretty disrespectful to teachers. And also, I think silly, because when people are in the building, your principal isn't over your shoulder all the time, making sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. It really isn't any different from working from home. So, I don't know, this is very concerning to me, and that's about all I have to say.
For the public, item 5.14 was added to the agenda by unanimous vote at the beginning of the meeting. It is a resolution that speaks to the issues related to teachers and staff at schools. So for those who want to speak on that item, please reserve your comments until we get to 5.14. It's my understanding, however, that we have two speakers who actually put in cards for item 5.12, Erica Otero and Lona Hankins.
Okay, Ms. Hankins, I'm going to enable her mute, but Erica Otero, I'm not seeing that person's raise hand feature engaged.
Ms. Otero, it seems you're on the phone. *6 is to raise your hand.
Ms. Hankins, you're...
Good evening, Alona Hankins, 3704 Magazine Street. Currently, IDAA is in your policy manual listed as Educational Assessment Program. So it is confusing that you are writing a policy, IDAA, that is the minimum standards distance learning. That being said, my comments on this policy as written, it says that shall provide one-to-one. My question is, who's auditing it and what are the consequences? Because we know at some point in time, many charters in their applications said they were going to do one-to-one. And at some point in time in March, some of them got caught with their pants down because plenty of the charters did not have one-to-one. Kids were sent home without devices. So how are you going to monitor and what are the consequences if they're not providing it? And then the last one, you have some wiggle words around should make every effort to make sure that the homes are connected. What does that mean? How are you going to measure that? Again, those are wiggle words. It's my understanding that E-rate money follows the child. So to me, every child should get a hotspot. And quite frankly, I recall early on, back when an administrator was, when he worked at the RSD, was talking about giving students hotspots. So I don't understand how this many years later, we still have this gap in technology when folks were talking about solving the technology gap way back when. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. President, may I ask a quick question?
Hello?
Is this Erica Otero?
Yes, this is she.
Okay. Ms. Otero, please identify your name and address before your comments.
Got it. Erica Otero, 1330 Meriden Street. All right, my comment is, well, I am a teacher. Last year, I had a student who worked hard, was responsible, motivated. Once we switched to distance learning, her ability to do her best was impeded by the lack of reliable internet service. Of course, I worked with her. I was flexible, but it was undeniable that she was stressed and disturbed. She relied on a hotspot given to her by her school, but also had siblings who too needed the internet for their own classes at different schools. What will students like this do when they are with people who are less flexible? What if they need to sign up for the ACT? We need to do better. Improving virtual learning starts with step one, ensuring all students have broadband at home. I know on item 4.2 you discussed tech access support via donations, but we need to do again better. We need to push for reliable internet access that is subsidized and can be provided to all students who need it, whether their families can afford it or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Newell-Houston, you had a question?
I just wanted to request that the language for this resolution be shared with the public. I don't know where or how it is currently.
This item was posted.
Oh, gotcha. I'm sorry, for the one that Mr. Marshall's adding, can we make sure that that is also shared somehow?
That item will be read, since it was an item that was added, it will be read during the context of the meeting. I'm not sure if the ability to share at the moment, that's a question for administration.
Can it be put into the, okay, can it be put into well then directed at the superintendent? Can it be entered into the chat?
I don't know the answer to that one. That would be a question for the administration.
Right, I'm asking administration.
Yes, I'm checking right now with Mary Gordon to see if we can go ahead and add.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry.
Yes, give us a few minutes. Go ahead, please.
On, just for reference, I know Ms. Hankins mentioned policy IDAA, which was adopted by the board as a part of the consent agenda. We will confirm that that is the correct designation. At this point, we have a motion and a second. There are no other comments on this item. Any questions or comments from the board? If not, we're at a roll call. Mr. Ashley,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Ellison,
Yes.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Koppel,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston.
Yes.
That item passes. We're at item 5.13, new policy EBBI COVID-19 public health emergency. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board suspends its ordinary processes for policy adoption and immediately approve new policy EBBI COVID-19 public health emergency in accordance with legislative and BESI policy mandates. May I have a motion?
So moved with the waiving of the reading.
It's a motion by Mr. Koppel. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a second by Mr. Ashley. Is there any public comment on this item?
Yes, there are several. The first speaker is Emily Alverson, followed by Ms. Alverson is Lauren Jouette. Those speakers can engage the raise your hand feature, please. Ms. Jouette, your full name and address for the record, please.
Lauren Jewett, 604 Sadie Avenue, Metairie, Louisiana, 70003. So I read this new proposed health emergency policy, and it states, since we didn't read it for everyone on the line, that the superintendent is authorized to develop and revise plans for reopening schools or maintaining the safety of employees, students, and others to make required submissions to governmental authorities with regard thereto. And says, in the event that the superintendent develops or implements administrative rules, regulations, or procedures, or alters the school district's school reopening plan in any substantive fashion, he or she shall inform the board of such developments no later than the next regular meeting of the board. So from what I can publicly tell, the board isn't slated to meet for at least another 3 weeks from tonight. So I would urge the board to really look at that wording, because we know that so much changes in the course of the hours and days with COVID, and allowing our superintendent to only be required to inform you, the board, as our elected officials, of any changes or alterations to make about the district's reopening plans only until the next regular meeting of the board. It just doesn't really instill any faith in truly developing a safe process that we're all aware of as a community. And I feel that we should have much more frequent reports and information about the ways in which these plans are being changed and altered. I am also very concerned because I see that this new policy would govern the OPSB's direction of operations and direct operated schools, which only includes one school. It does not do that for the charters. I realize there are restrictions legislatively due to Act 91. However, we're in a global pandemic, and we have schools that are doing vastly different things right now on behalf of students and teachers and school staff. And that's very alarming, especially when teachers do not feel that they're able to truly speak up about the safety issues that are going on in their buildings. Thank you.
Once again, Emily Alverson, please engage raise hand feature. The next speaker, if not available, is Erica Otero. Ms. Otero, can you please state your full name and address for the record?
Yes, Erica Otero, 1330 Marion Street. All right. So I'd like to also echo on what was mentioned previously, that according to this new policy, the superintendent is authorized to implement procedures necessary to protect employees and students, relying on the Louisiana Department of Ed and Louisiana Department of Health. I would add, and the voice of all stakeholders. I think that's another important piece to include there. Protecting teachers includes allowing teachers to work from home where possible. There are schools that are requiring teachers to go to the building for work, for PD, orientations, etc., and it's not right. Forcing teachers to work in the building for virtual learning demonstrates a lack of trust in teachers as professionals who are passionate about their jobs and a disregard for their safety and the safety of the community. There are other ways to hold teachers accountable without violating public health guidelines. Remember that even in phase 2, Mayor says, safer at home. I will end with a quote of Frederick Douglass that is most timely, if I may. There are such things in the world as human rights. When there is a supposed conflict between human and national rights, it is safe to go with the side of humanity. Thank you.
The next speaker is Calistia Blinsky. After Ms. Blinsky, Dennis Ward. Ms. Blinsky, Mr. Ward, if you are in the meeting, please engage to raise your hand. If not, we're moving on to the next speaker, Dave Cash.
Hello.
Mr. Cash, your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Dave Cash. I reside at 2715 Lapperouse Street. I applaud the board's decision to require all schools in the city under its authority to start virtually this year. That action demonstrated the board's capacity and willingness to act authoritatively when an emergency threatens the safety of those to whom it is responsible. I am fortunate to teach in a school that puts people first, from students to families to school staff. Our summer professional development has been 100% virtual. No staff member being required to come into the school building. I am lucky. Unfortunately, many of my fellow educators who work in schools across the city are not so lucky. As a union leader, I know many of my sisters and brothers who are being required to show up in their buildings this summer, often to participate in video conferences they could have joined from home. And many are being told, including those with school-age children of their own, that they will be required to teach virtually from their classrooms when school starts. What sense does this make? Where is the compassion? They aren't being treated as professionals. They aren't being treated with dignity. They aren't being treated as people. The health of people who work in schools shouldn't be based on luck. I urge this board to use the authority it so rightly used to keep children safe to also keep those who teach, nurture, and care for them safe. Require all schools to allow school staff members to work remotely from home until they feel safe enough to work in person. This is not an HR matter. This is a matter of decency. This is a matter of life and death. We can't afford to lose any more teachers to this crisis. Thank you.
Sorry. The next speaker is Nicole Gasparini. After Ms. Gasparini, Colette Tippy. Nicole Gasparini or Colette Tippy, please engage raise hand feature. If not, moving on to Lily Clark. Oh, Miss Tippy.
Hello, members of the school board. My name is Colette Tippy. I'm at 1416 Marigny Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. I am also following up on Lauren Jewett's comments regarding this policy stating that this is going to be the job of the superintendent to put in place plans. You may have noted that in the chat box, I was raising that in the minutes from the meeting on June 11th. Mr. Brown requested a proposed timeline regarding reopening plans to be shared with the board and the public. Dr. Lewis clarified that planning efforts have begun and are largely framed by dynamic state guidance. Once feedback is received on the plan, the administration will propose a final plan at the next meeting in July. This policy, as it is currently written, doesn't appear to give the board any decision-making power in any of the plans that are being put into place during this emergency. at any time. I am concerned that this is a publicly elected school board, and the school board members are entrusted to the people of New Orleans to make decisions on behalf of them. In addition, as we consider what these policies and procedures should look like, it seems like regular reporting out of where there are cases of COVID-19 in each school would be very helpful for the community if there are cases of people who've been inside of school buildings in particular. And in addition, of the schools who are currently having staff members appear in person for their distance learning, is it possible to get a sense of exactly which schools those are and what is the racial makeup of their staff? I'll yield my time.
Next speaker is Lily Clark.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Lily Clark, 906 Wilson Drive, 70119. Thank you to the board. I would like to reiterate how relieved I was to see that we will begin our year virtually. I thought that that decision was powerful and very much needed. In terms of this resolution 5.13, I'm very concerned about the seemingly unlimited powers that this grants to our superintendent. While a wonderful public servant, our school board is our elected board, and that is who I would like to see making the decisions in this public health emergency. I am concerned that I don't know how my voice or the voice of the people in this city will be heard, given that the task force that the superintendent has put together has not included a variety of voices. It has not had open public meeting notes available to the public. And so I'm really concerned about who is going to be making decisions about our students and our teachers and the people in this city who are going to be affected by the reopening of schools. Given that, I'd also like to say that the experience of teachers across this city is so vastly different. I'm lucky to be at a school that is allowing us much autonomy in terms of deciding our working conditions. And I have friends who have a school who is providing childcare for free. The experience is so different across this city and for no fault of the teachers. And I wonder why one school can afford to do this thing while another school cannot, and how much that affects the quality of teachers that will be retained at those schools, and that we should have a minimum of expectations for how our schools, staff, and employees are treated. Thank you.
That was the last comment card submitted of the folks that that identified themselves.
Okay. Is there any question or comment from the board?
I have a question. I'm a little confused about the wording because where it talks about the board requires each charter school to adopt their own policies, but then it says that this new policy is only to its direct operated or direct operated schools. I'm a little confused about this.
So, Ms. Jackson, in accordance with the language that's set forth in the documents that we've looked at from Bessie and LDOE, that language was included because it appears that, yes, the board has to adopt a policy, but we also need to require the charter schools to do the same in accordance with that section of the bulletin. So that's an additional piece of language that was added in connection with some conversations that we've had with the state.
The piece about the new policy would govern the OPSB direct operations?
About the charter schools, that language just identified.
Okay.
I have a question. If you finish Ms. Jackson's concern.
I'm finished.
Okay. And I address this to our board attorney. I think there's some legitimate concerns concerning this particular policy. Although our superintendent has been very good, he has not waited until this board meeting to inform us of what decisions were being made, what considerations were underway, and so on. He's been very good at that. But if we're going to put a policy in place that will address, a situation like this, emergency like this COVID-19, and prayerfully we will not have something of this nature anytime in the future. But nonetheless, I think it's worth our reviewing this and maybe tabling this so that we can look at it. I particularly I gave attention to one of the speakers who talked about the third paragraph, which talks about the superintendent informing the board of such developments no later than the next regular meeting. Well, our superintendent has been good about letting us know almost immediately what decisions were being considered and what decisions were ultimately made. However, we are putting policy into place in the event that we have future events of this nature, and if we have another superintendent in its place. So anyway, I'm just asking a board attorney if we can, what do we do to table this so that we can consider any revisions to this policy?
Mr. Brown, as you might have seen, the recommendation was that we suspend board policy. As you might have seen, that we did a notice of intent on this on Tuesday because the state has asked that we pass a policy before the beginning of the next school year. So time is really of the essence.
Okay.
Ms. Moss also has some comments that she wanted to share on this. So I don't know that we can necessarily table it in light of that mandate from the state.
Well, I guess, yeah, I'm sorry, Superintendent. Well,
no, I was going to go ahead and say, as Kathy Moss is coming forward, as Board Council has mentioned, that there is a timeline where a school district has to go ahead and pass policies concerning the public health emergency. And just as you all know, as many times we receive policy that's after legislation has passed, there are, whether it's the Louisiana School Board Association, as well as the FOTHAR, who actually write policies for the school districts across Louisiana, actually drafted a lot of what has been presented here today. And so again, this language came to us actually from I would say, the state, I guess, to be able to actually say what the language needs to be. And again, I'll have Kathy to share some more, but this is like many times when we have many of those policies that you all see on the agenda, because the law has changed, the same company that provides this information for school district actually also have provided this language for us here today. I'll yield to Kathy Moss at this.
Yes, good afternoon, board members. I just wanted to make clear that in the rationale statement, it does make clear that this policy that the board is being asked to adopt does relate to its direct operations and its direct operated schools. Bulletin 741 is a bulletin that governs local school boards. The language that is there with regard to the charter schools is to ensure that the board also is clear of its obligation to require that the same of its charters with regard to Bulletin 126. Bulletin 126 is the charter schools bulletin, and that bulletin contains the same minimum safety requirements that Bessie included in 741. So there are two bulletins for two separate sets of entities, one for local school boards and one for charter schools. So that's why the language is there, just to indicate that the school board is responsible for adopting policy, as well as the school board being responsible for ensuring that its charters adopt policy as well. With regard to the language that provides for the school board the superintendent to inform the school board at the next regularly scheduled meeting, that only indicates that that is the next formal opportunity for the superintendent to publicly address the board in a formal manner on the record. However, that does not preclude the superintendent from informing the public and the board immediately upon any changes in any plan, and that has been the routine of our superintendent. So I just wanted to make clear why the policy is worded that way.
Okay. Given the fact that we need to provide this policy and we have a timeline for doing so, then we can look at this going forward. Go ahead and possibly approve it now that the board is still willing, and then we can make whatever changes going forward. And I'll be looking at that and making some recommendations based on what we've heard from the public tonight. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, if not, we're at a roll call. Ms. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson. Ms. Jackson.
I'm here. Yes.
Mr. Koppel.
Yes.
Mr. Marshall.
Yes.
Ms. Noel-Houston.
Yes.
That item passes. We're at item 5.4, which was resolution 24-20. It is a resolution urging all schools under the Orleans Parish School Board's jurisdiction to enact policies and plans that will thoughtfully evaluate every teacher, school employee, and student requests for distance learning and teaching opportunities, allow such opportunities as required by the state of public health, and support and properly train to teach or learn from home until it is safe to return to school. I'll go ahead and read the resolution in its entirety. Whereas pursuant to the Louisiana Homeland Security and Emergency Assistance and Disaster Act, Louisiana Revised Statute 29:721 et sec, the governor declared a public health emergency in response to the threat posed by COVID-19. Whereas the governor declared that a statewide public health emergency existed in the state of Louisiana because of COVID-19 and expressly empowered the governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness and Secretary of the Department of Health and/or the state health officer to take all actions authorized under state law. Whereas in declaring such a public health emergency, the governor ordered a limitation on public gatherings in a single place. At the same time, in an effort to avoid individuals being in close proximity to one another to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Whereas the governor further closed all public schools for the 2019-2020 academic year and required all schools to provide or ensure provision of remote or distance learning. Whereas as a result of such closure, and in order to ensure continuity of education for students, schools in Orleans Parish pivoted to distance learning models for the remainder of the 2019-2020 academic year. Whereas recognizing that distance learning will continue in Orleans Parish Public Schools for at least a portion of the 2020-2021 academic year, the Orleans Parish School Board has adopted policy IDAA COVID-19 distance learning, which establishes minimum standards for distance learning in Orleans Parish School Board direct operated schools should there be a need for more school closures during a COVID-19 public health emergency. Whereas the Orleans Parish School Board also adopted Resolution 23-20, minimum standards for distance learning, urging charter schools to adopt minimum standards for distance learning consistent with policy IDAA COVID-19 distance learning. Whereas teachers, paraprofessionals, social workers, school nurses, and clerical staff have raised concerns regarding their ability to safely return to school buildings during the COVID-19 public health emergency. Whereas teachers, paraprofessionals, social workers, school nurses, and clerical staff are of great value for the education of students in Orleans Parish, and no teacher or staff member shall face reprisals for raising safety concerns in a school or in a work environment, whereas requests for distance teaching opportunities and safety concerns raised by teachers, paraprofessionals, social workers, school nurses, and clerical staff deserve thoughtful consideration and response to ensure a safe learning environment for everyone. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Orleans Parish School Board urges all schools under the Orleans Parish School Board's jurisdiction to enact policies and plans that will thoughtfully evaluate every teacher, school employee, and student request for distance learning and teaching opportunities, allow such opportunities as required by the state of public health, and support and properly train to teach or learn from home until it is safe to return to school. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board adopt Resolution 24-20. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Marshall, I think a second by Mr. Koppel. Is there a public comment on this? I believe there are a few.
Yes, from the one earlier, the first speaker, I believe Ms. Hankins, said she no longer wishes to speak. Next, Alex Frosch. Okay, Ms. Hankins did raise her hand.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to repeat how it's unsafe for teachers to be in school buildings right now, but it's also unsafe for this board because what happens in the community will, in this instance, affect the board immediately. I see my time.
Going back to Ms. Hankins.
Yes, I'm concerned. So there's 2 points I want to make, or a couple of points I want to make. In your language, you say urge. You hold the contract. Saying urge allows them to choose not to participate. You hold the contract, you can demand. So I strongly suggest that you change that word to you shall. Secondly, while this resolution deals with the duration that we are on schools remotely and teaching remotely, I am concerned that the plan for when the children return to the building, it is not robust enough. As I sat and listened to the team at Bessie talk about the plan for reopen, the doctor from Children's said distance and spacing first, mask second. 1 to 25 or 25 children in a classroom, there's no way you can social distance. As the landlord of the building, you have an obligation to tell how many folks can safely fit in the building, social distancing. Therefore, you have the obligation to provide plans, sketches that show how many kids per classroom based on the square footage of the classroom can safely social distancing. Same thing with the buses. You hold the contracts with the charter. You should tell the charters how many children per bus should safely operate. This is a disaster. The superintendent has all rights in the disaster to keep the children safe. I'm pretty sure that is in the law, that in the Return to Schools Law, Act 93, 91, whatever it is, he has all the power.
Next speaker, Shannon Cipher.
Hi, I am going to comment on the same thing regarding you guys as landlords.
I think it is your responsibility to close all schools. There is no way to safely open them and not expect infections to occur. Dr. Fauci recently said teachers and students will be part of an experiment of school reopenings. There is no other way to parse this. It is an experiment. You are experimenting on children by allowing schools to open, and you are deferring your responsibility and leadership by allowing schools to organize themselves. They're going to choose money every time because that's how we've set up our charter school system. Also, as you can see in the chat, and I didn't give my address, Shannon Cipher, 501 Passera Court, New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans students, school staffs, and families deserve a uniform commitment to their safety and not be subjected to this racist, classist experiment. As the adults in the room, it is our duty to keep children safe. This policy is not that. Despite the fact that our education system is fragmented through the charter system, the board owns the school buildings and has the authority to keep them closed throughout the duration of the pandemic. Unless the board closes the school buildings, I believe the board and superintendent should be required to be inside each of our schools every day. Students and staff are required to be there. Help reduce the spread of infection to zero. Keep children safe. Don't experiment on them. Close the school buildings and require that all charter schools go to virtual learning and put all of your resources to that now until the transmission is reduced to zero. You have organizations like Google, which have shifted to complete out-of-campus work until 2021. We are at the center, the hot zone of this pandemic in Louisiana. This is an experiment on children. There is no other way to parse that. This is a new disease, and you are subjecting these kids to an experiment.
Next speaker, Taylor Ott. Just a reminder, please state your full name and address for the record.
My name is Taylor Ott, 926 9th Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. I would like to submit this form to you guys, or this letter that we created. I'm going to put it in the chat so you can just see the sheer amount of people who have. I know there are multiple petitions going around, but it cannot be stressed more. Shannon said it perfectly. This is an experiment. We do not know how this will affect the kids in the long run, and let alone like how it will be to be in these classrooms. Also, so many of our students live with grandparents, live with vulnerable populations, and you are also putting this on them. These children will take this sickness home, and so many children have their support from these older people that are in their families. I cannot stress more. They need it for stability. They need it for their own like tutoring and education in their home. This is so important. We must take responsibility and protect our kids and our communities. And we are a vulnerable community. Thank you.
Next speaker, Erica Otero. After Erica Otero, Sam. I believe last name was King, Sam King.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, your full name and address for the record, please.
Hi there, my name is Sam King. I live at 2205 St. Roch Ave in New Orleans. I am a school social worker, and I'm very grateful that the board has prioritized implementing trauma-informed approaches in our schools. I want to ask y'all tonight to remember and keep in mind the trauma-informed principle of physical and psychological safety. I've been able to work in my building off and on throughout the spring and summer, and I personally have felt safe in the building. I also look forward to returning full time. But that being said, a person's sense of safety is their own, and so what feels safe to me might not feel safe to someone else. School staff need to feel physically and psychologically safe to effectively do their jobs, and giving staff the option to participate in PD and provide instruction in person or from home allows staff to decide what feels the most safe to them, and also upholds this important principle of trauma-informed schools. Thank you.
The next speaker is Alicia Williams. After Ms. Williams, Whitney Henderson.
My name is Alicia Williams. I'm at 3927 Toulouse Street. While I'm fortunate that my charter is holding professional development for teachers virtually currently, I was told that they weren't sure if teachers would be required to come in and teach virtually at the start of the year, and we're waiting for guidance from y'all. My school has also told families that distance learning will be for the next 3 weeks. As a city with the highest per capita COVID death rates, the idea of going back into the school building is terrifying and unacceptable. I'm urging you today as our elected school board members to pass the resolution which protects teachers and students and other staff. This proposed resolution is vital to ensure that teachers will not be forced to go back into the building to teach virtually, but will be trusted to do their jobs from home. It will ensure we do not allow schools to reopen until there are ideally 0 new cases a day for at least 5 days or more, and guarantee access to frequent testing for staff and students when schools do reopen. Despite Act 91, my charter management organization is consistently telling our staff that they have been taking their guidance on reopening from NOLA Public Schools, and I know that to be true of others as well. You have the power to stand up, to be our voice, to fight for our safety and our lives at this point. We also know, as said before, that you can use your power as landlords of the building to ensure that students and staff can stay home during virtual school. If you do not take action and pass this, we know that once again, our Black and brown children and educators will be harmed by the institutional racism in the form of repeated exposure to the virus, in the form of distrust in their ability to do their jobs from home, in the form of lack of access to equitable resourcing and testing. We urge you to pass this resolution and ensure that our students and school staff are not being used, as others have said before me, for another experiment in education. We cannot allow our students and teachers to be the first ones to go back into the building and let others watch as this experiment fails and people die from reopening too soon. As an educator, there's nothing more I want than to be back in the building with my kids, my students. But the pandemic will not listen to what I want, and it will not listen to arbitrary guidelines or dates for reopening either. Once again, I urge you to pass this. Thank you.
The next speaker is Whitney Henderson. After Ms. Henderson, Sarah Hill. Last two cards I have on that is Whitney Henderson and Sarah Hill.
Thank you.
Ms. Henderson, your full name and address for the record, please.
Whitney Henderson, 1519 Baronne Street. Thank you for this resolution. As author of the petition to protect New Orleans teachers, my final words are that we need OPSB to use your power as owner and landlord of school buildings to regulate who goes in and out of buildings and ensure that teachers, support staff, and paraprofessionals are safely at home during virtual school. Here are a few more salient comments from the petition. First comment, my mother is a teacher. She's 65. My dad is 70 with health problems, including diabetes. They are both at extreme risk of getting sick, and I do not have the money for hospital bills if they do. With my father's pre-existing health conditions, he cannot afford to contract the virus if my mother brings it home. Until Louisiana has accessible and affordable healthcare for all, and until all hospitals can safely and securely take care of everyone who walks through its doors, it is unfair to require teachers to return to work if kids aren't there. It is irresponsible to put your voting citizens in danger without the means to help them once they are directly affected from the danger you put them in. Please imagine if this was your family. Next comment. Teachers deserve to be able to feel just as safe as anyone else without having to risk their careers. They are the people who are preparing and leading the future generation. They deserve to be treated as such. Former New Orleans student. Next comment. Our teachers are irreplaceable resources in our culture and society. Protect them. Final comment. Our teachers sacrifice their students every day and on their own time, but they will not be helping students in any way by putting their health at risk by returning to classrooms. I think it's insulting to teachers to demand that they sit in buildings just so that they're monitored after all they've been through, managing their own families and the lives of each other and their commitment to education. Where's the childcare for their children? Take care of the people who support our future. Thank you.
That is the last card that I had. We currently have 4 raised hands.
I believe because people were confused when this item was added as 5.14, and there was no way for them to indicate on the card. I think we can go ahead and let those people speak unless Mr. Ashley believes otherwise.
No, I believe that we should do that, please.
So right now I have 4 raised hands. First speaker is Jessica Jackson. Please state your full name and address for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Jackson. I am a resident at 2220 Cleary Avenue in Metairie, Louisiana. I'll be really quick. I'm tuning in on behalf of Volkert Incorporated, which is an engineering firm. We recently submitted a proposal for the professional engineering services, and I know that the selection was supposed to be made this evening, so I was just trying to inquire which firm was selected for that.
Ma'am, that's a different item.
Okay, so just to verify, do I need to reach out after this evening to get that information?
Yes,
Thank
someone should have contacted them. Thank you.
Thanks.
Heather Harris, your full name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Heather Harris, Barony Street, 70122. Good evening. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Marshall for submitting this resolution, hearing our concerns, and taking action. Last week, I was fired for raising concerns about my school's plan to mandate that teachers work from the building during virtual school. I was a member of the leadership team and spoke up on behalf of teachers who were not yet aware of the plan that would affect them more than anyone, as they did not have a seat at the table. The common rationale given for this requirement is that it will increase teacher accountability and make virtual school more effective. Our students deserve an excellent education, virtually or in person, but as education leaders, we can use other methods to ensure accountability that do not increase health risks. Instead of controlling what space teachers work from, leaders can pop into Zoom classes, have virtual content meetings, give lesson plan feedback, require and review Zoom recordings, analyze real-time data, etc., etc., etc. Furthermore, forcing teachers to work in the building does not mean that teaching will be more effective, and in fact, it may have the opposite effect. Teachers may not feel valued or trusted to fulfill their professional obligations, and it will be difficult for people to tap into their creativity and ingenuity, which is a huge part of what makes teaching most effective, especially virtually. Since my termination, I've been working in solidarity with a group of education leaders to help amplify the voices of concerned teachers and parents across the city. Policies that are requiring teachers to work from the building, doing work that could be done more safely at home, send the message that some schools in New Orleans distrust teachers more than they value their safety. Over 1,200 of those voices agree and ask that this board take substantive action on all 3 of the petition's safety demands. Voting yes on Mr. Marshall's resolution is a good first step in protecting the health and safety of our teachers and our community. None of us are safe until all of us are safe. Thank you.
Next, Ms. Richard, your full name and address for the record, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wanda Richard, United Teachers of New Orleans President, 2714 Canal Street, Suite 302. I want to personally thank Board Member Norla Marshall for presenting this resolution for the safety of our children, our staff, teachers, our administrators, bus drivers, cafeteria people, and custodians. I also want to thank Board Member John Brown for bringing up the clarity that we need to look at some more clarity on this resolution. So I hope y'all can get that straight and make it 100% perfect. I also want to say that, remember, when we go back when there's a time to go back, we need to look at things scientifically. Like all doctors are saying, Dr. Felci and all, we must look at the scientific medical facts before we go back into these buildings. And I want to thank you all for all of the hard work you're doing. I relent my time. Thanks.
Next, Lily, your full name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Lily Clark, 906 Wilson Drive, 70119. Thank you for allowing us to speak on this item as it was added to the agenda after the start of the meeting. I'd like to speak specifically to one part of this resolution. First, that schools thoughtfully evaluate every teacher, but most importantly, allow the opportunities as required by the state of public health. And if we think about the state of public health and we go back to what the CDC guidelines are that have come out about what phase each city should be in, I urge us to use the not political, but the scientific guidelines put out by the CDC back in, May perhaps, saying that phase 1 of a city or government's reopening should only happen after a certain number of metrics have been met, one of which is 14 days of decreasing cases. Now that is different from what we're talking about now, 50 new cases a day and 5% positive. However, this CDC guideline is more stringent and is the one we truly should be looking to when we decide what is safe. What is safe is clearly out there by medical experts. We just need to listen to them. Thank you.
Stephanie, if you could please state your full name and address for the record.
Hi, my name's Stephanie Belinsky. My address is 1461 North Robertson Street. I want to start by thanking the council member who put up this proposal. This really begins to address a lot of concern about the word urge as opposed to require. It is within the school board's power to require that educators be allowed to work from home during distance learning. And as an educator, I have seen that a lot of educators have lost trust in charter networks to follow things that they're urged to do as opposed to what they're required to do. Furthermore, a lot of charter networks have proposed really unreasonable plans for parents who are also teachers in terms of childcare or lack thereof. So I hope that you take that into consideration, that teachers are not just teachers. Teachers are community members. Teachers are parents. Teachers have chronic illnesses. Teachers are vulnerable too. Thank you.
That is the final speaker.
Do we have any comments or questions from the board?
I'd like to make a comment. And I want to first apologize to the community that we could not give them advance notice of this resolution. Second, I want to thank my fellow colleagues for understanding the importance of this resolution and adding it to the agenda at the very last minute. Having a daughter that is a third-generation teacher in one of our schools, and I being of the age that is particularly at risk, may make me more sensitive to these issues. However, her school will start the school year with teachers and others working from home and will only have them report to the building a week before the students. However, that cannot be said about all schools. The proposed resolution will ask all school leaders to adopt similar plans. These actions will help make the risk of contracting or spreading the virus minimal. Our school employees are not easily replaced and are the heartbeat of an educated democracy. We should do everything possible to protect them. I ask all school leaders to understand the intent of this resolution and to comply. Thank you very much.
If I can, just really quickly, I just want to acknowledge the work of Mr. Marshall to get this resolution to the board. I mean, we were literally late night in yesterday, and I just want to say, you know, I'm very proud of you, dear brother. I'm proud of the work that you're doing on behalf of teachers in this moment, but it's just indicative of how you serve in general. And so as board president, I want to acknowledge that to both the public and you for the work that you're doing in this moment. So I just want to make sure that I said that on the record. I'm very proud of you, Mr. Marshall. There's a lot more work we have to do to make sure that everyone's safe in this moment, but I know we're headed in the right direction. And with that said, I'll yield to board counsel.
Any other question or comment from the board on this particular resolution? If none, we're at a roll call vote. Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Koppel?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston?
Yes.
That item passes. The resolution is adopted. We're now at item 6, executive session.
And Board President, may I say something before we go to executive session?
Please.
Thank you very much. Yes, just very quickly, just wanted to share and just a reminder for our community. As we made the decision to pivot to distance learning, it was a decision that was made after a careful evaluation of the critical health data points. And of course, when that decision was made to start remotely for the month of August, it also was an opportunity to reduce the number of gatherings and group sizes as we think of our buildings. But I just want to say this evening, I'm very proud of the leadership of our district, as we have shown leadership not only in the metropolitan area, but across the state of Louisiana, as we are working hard to protect and put protections in place for staff and students. Many of our surrounding schools at this time are either pushing dates back because they had them and they just keep moving them back. And so we're engaging with our students to make sure that we can start a very successful school year. And then some of our neighboring parishes are actually starting school in the coming days. And so again, I want our community to know that we've taken this critical health data seriously. We made tough decisions to make sure that we are able to start our school year in a very distance learning format. But also, I want our community to know that we're not going to return our students until we have met our goals and targets that have been set by public experts. So again, we want our community to continue to review and understand the roadmap. If you haven't had a chance to read it, take some time out to read it. It's a great guide to help us understand how we're going to guide the district and our students and our families and our educators through this crisis in the city of New Orleans. So I just wanted to just share that, Board President. So I thank you for the opportunity to just share some additional information for the record on this evening.
Thank you, Superintendent. Board Counsel, are we now at executive session?
Yes, we are.
All right. The time now is 7:41 p.m. May I have a motion to move into executive session?
So move, John Brown.
I have a motion by Mr. Brown. I have a second by Ms. Newell Houston. May I have I'll yield to the board counsel for a roll call vote, excuse me.
Mr. Ashley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Ellison?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Koppel?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston? Ms. Newell Houston?
Yes.
Motion passes. We are in executive session.
All right. Is Mr. Brown on?
Is everybody ready?
I think we can call back to order the meeting. Yes, so calling back to order the July 30th, 2020 Orleans Parish School Board Business Meeting. The time now is 7:50 p.m. May I have a roll call?
Mr. Ashley,
Present.
Mr. Brown, Mr. Brown,
I thought he jumped on.
Miss Ellison,
Here.
Miss Jackson,
Here.
Mr. Koppel,
Present.
Mr. Marshall,
Here.
Miss Newell Houston,
Present.
Mr. Brown, I thought he jumped back on too, but we do have a quorum, Mr. Ashley.
All right, at this time, I'll yield to Board Counsel.
The board convened an executive session to discuss item 6.1, discussion of the character, the professional competence, physical or mental health of a person, school board personnel. No action will be taken on that item at this time. The board also discussed item 6.2, prospective litigation regarding opioid class action proof of claim. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approves the course of action recommended by board counsel. May I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Koppel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ashley. Any public comments?
None.
Any questions or comments from the board? If not, roll call.
Yes.
Mr. Brown, Miss Ellison,
Yes.
Miss Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Koppel,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Miss Newell Houston.
Yes.
That item passes. We're at 6.3. The board convened an executive session to discuss Choice Foundation et al. Versus Law Industries Inc. et al. CDC number 2019-04385, construction litigation. It is recommended that the Orleans Parish School Board approves the course of action recommended by board counsel. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Koppel, a second by Mr. Marshall. Any public comments?
None.
Any questions or comments from the board? We have a roll call vote. Mr. Ashley,
Yes.
Mr. Brown, Miss Ellison,
Yes.
Miss Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Koppel,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Miss Newell Houston, Miss Newell Houston,
Yes.
that item passes. We are now at 7.1, Mr. Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you. I see no more items on the agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll give it to Mr. Marshall. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll give it to Miss Ellison. Are there any public comments on this matter?
None.
Hearing none, I'll yield to board counsel for roll call.
Mr. Ashley,
Yes.
Mr. Brown, Miss Ellison,
Yes.
Miss Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Koppel,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Miss Newell Houston.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Yes.
Thank you. The time now is 7:54 p.m. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Be safe. See you all soon.
Y'all have a good night.
Thank you all. Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.